We'll jump straight into this. Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be. I've jumped in because we were talking before we started, and Louis, well, to be quite honest, was being controversial. Louis, tell us again, what would you love to happen to the chap in Portugal who landed at Lisbon airport with a karma?
Okay, a few months ago, a guy was a professional photographer, which was operating nearby the Lisbon airport, which is just an international airport. He said he had a flyaway, and his drone landed on the main runway. So what happened? He was caught, identified, and now the Civil Aviation Authority issued him a fine of 3,900 euros. But as it is a crime, a public crime, he can now be prosecuted and faces a jail time of up to 5 years. So it's karma for him because he was operating the karma.
But that's 5 years. That seems a long time. What else can you do to get yourself 5 years in Portugal?
I don't know because I really don't know. But the thing is,
you need to kill.
No, not if we go after Hungarian people. Now the thing is,
it might be karma, but let's hope it doesn't inspire others to do the same.
Oh,
yeah.
But
nice,
it could just be a phantom prosecution.
No. It could be an inspired too. It could be inspired too. No, the thing is, we have rules, and there were rules when this thing happened. He wasn't complying with any rule, and he was operating 500 meters or whatever it was, doing a professional work. So he didn't comply, didn't ask for permissions, he didn't ask for anything. And apparently he had an issue with the karma, and karma came and beat him. That's it. So perhaps he should ask GoPro for a indemnification for the karma flyaway, but I really don't know. It's okay. I'm sorry for him personally. He should know better. He broke a bunch of rules and laws regarding operation with drones. He was a professional, so he's not taking pictures of his kittens. So what would we expect?
Well,
I think,
but aren't you being a bit harsh? I mean, normally it's me that's harsh. I mean, 3,900 euros, that's quite a bit of money. He's been to court. He's got a criminal record now, I assume.
No. Yeah, that's only the fine from the air authority. Okay. Now, and besides that, as there is a law of putting commercial transportation in danger, he has to face civil courts. Okay,
so
it's just a fine.
So your authority.
And now he has to go to a regular court to answer to the rest of the accusations.
Wow. Now here and in the UK, I don't know about in America, New Zealand, or even where Nicola is, the authority would have to take you to a grown-up court to get you charged. The authority couldn't level here or in the UK. The authority couldn't give you a fine.
Yeah, but
it would have to go to court.
Okay, here there are fines for violating the rare air rules, and those are clear. And then you go to court because you broke a bunch of other laws regarding the endangerment of transportation. So, and that can be up to 5 years in jail. So, okay, it's bad for him, but it might get some of the pirates that are flying without any rules or any permissions whatsoever. And our civil authorities are being very, very kind and very gracious with all the things that we get. They fight the government on stupid rules that the government wants to implement, and the Civil Aviation Authority tries to get some good sense from them. And it's the only way that people will learn. If you will see a guy getting fines and getting a suspended jail time or something, people will learn.
But only if that is in the press and people and people are told.
It was in the press.
Okay.
It was in the press.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, fair enough. Even in there, Patrick, it probably was a garbage bag. Well, that going to allow me to jump because Nicola is on a tight time frame here. But funny enough, he's been he's had an issue with an aircraft. Maybe you could unpack that, and maybe you could ask the guys at Spectre Works and Louis what they think you should do or what the issue was. So over to you, Nicola.
All right, thanks. Spectre Works. So I'm assuming if Gary's putting you up as an offering to help, I'm assuming you're using. I assume you're using RG Pilot.
Our company is an RD Pilot partner, and we do a lot of work with RD Pilot. Of course, Louis is a member of the dev team, so he's also very qualified to talk about RD Pilot.
No. You take over. You take over.
Louis knows only copters and helicopters, so.
All right.
So, here's the issue I had on Sunday. I was flying the my flight dream crosswind on top of the mountain that's next to my city, so about 12 kilometers off and about 2 kilometers up. And I was coming down because the top of the mountain sort of slopes down and it's covered in snow and it's very beautiful. And I'm like flying about 10, 20 meters over it, very close, very close to the snow. And I'm following the top part of it. And at some point, because I'm not really looking at the home arrow, I must have gotten behind the mountain while following that terrain and lost connection with the plane, at which point the autopilot just must have turned around and literally ran into the side of the mountain because it immediately starts gliding down on a direct path to the takeoff point. So I'm pretty certain from the DVR footage I can estimate where it has probably planted itself. But I was curious if there's an option on RGplane because I haven't really looked at it. But looking at the failsafe tab, you don't have an option to set like return to land altitude and behavior, meaning, for instance, gain a set altitude first and then turn around or something like that. And I didn't find that, and I didn't find that easily in the full parameter list. Somebody told me about it.
No,
and
the plane will climb if it has a return to home and the altitude is above the current altitude. It will go and glide there. You are telling it that it should do a corkscrew to gain altitude. It doesn't do that. It just navigates to the current height.
But hold on. First of all, where the hell do you set that return to home altitude? Because that's only the full parameter.
Yeah. So
and I'm sorry. I'm thinking right now it should be on the failsafe tab, not on the full parameter list. I mean, it probably should be a few lines of code, but also, why the hell not do a corkscrew climb if that's what would be best in a certain situation? You know where you're gonna fly, and you just click that option. Why not? And that's how the developer.
Nicola. Sorry, guys. First of all, the behavior of the corkscrew, I would say the best thing to do is to create an issue on the Autopilot GitHub so that it can be treated by the dev team in group. Second, that is there are issues with Mission Planner that sometimes it does not refresh the parameters, so you might not get the correct version of the parameters that your version of the plane has. So there's an hidden menu on Mission Planner so that you can refresh the parameters. So then you perhaps will get that. Third, I would say to use another ground control station software like Q Ground Control, where their things are placed in logical places.
So
I've tried Q Ground Control. Nothing is in logical places. Trust me.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I have some input here. So yeah, this whole flying behind the mountain problem is one of the core technical differences when you're training pilots for flying beyond line of sight versus remaining line of sight. And when we're training people on our platforms, especially within ArduPilot, it's one of the most important things to really get down is how you're going to handle lost comms procedures like this. And even in Piccolo, Joe has a lot of experience with. It's one of the most critical things that separates a very experienced operator from somebody who's just getting started. Within ArduPlane, so the parameter for setting the RTL altitude is kind of an old legacy name, and it is hidden in the full parameter list, and that's something that could be fixed. Yeah, exactly. So when we're actually doing beyond line of sight operations, we're usually actually not using the standard RTL behavior, but rather writing a do land start landing plan. So where instead of doing a go back straight to your takeoff location and then either land or loiter, you actually put in basically a mission plan that describes exactly the behavior that you want it to have. What's cool is that you can actually have multiple landing plans. So if you're flying in a specific zone and you want it to enter the landing plan in a different place, depending on where it is, you can also do that. And that's how we handle this behavior. It would be nice if ArduPilot could add just a default loiter to alt before RTL. That could be a nice option. I'll see if I can bring that to the dev team. But it's not a behavior that everybody wants, because if you're just flying in a pattern, you don't want your plane to stop and do that. So, you know, but it'd be good to have the choice.
Yeah, exactly. It would be good to have the choice. And hold on, Louis, hold on, just a second. I'm asking because I have gone through iNav as well at some point, and it had those options. You were able to choose for a plane what kind of behavior you want, and you can switch that for every flight depending on what you're doing. So for this flight, if I had the option, because I went into the full parameter list and I couldn't find anything, and just went with it. Wasn't really planning to go behind the mountain, but you know, when I'm actually paying attention to wind speed, ground speed, and trying to keep it low to the snow without actually hitting the top of the mountain on purpose, you know, that home arrow sort of escaped my attention, and you know, something like this happened. Funny thing is, I really didn't care that this had happened, because I've got 3 more planes similarly equipped, other models, but they still have the same function. And yesterday, I wasn't actually going to try and find it, but I was talking to somebody very special to me, and she was like, well, I really like that plane, so we need to find it. And I'm like, okay, if you're gonna use the word we, then you're coming with me. So yeah. And yesterday we went to the flying field with my clouds, because it's got a gimbal and a camera on it, a 4K camera, and it's actually my longest range plane in terms of video and radio power. And I couldn't even get to the top of the mountain because the winds were so strong. It was hilarious. The plane just stopped at some point and wouldn't go any further at full throttle, and that plane can go 120 kilometers an hour at full throttle during level flight. It just stopped in its track. But even so, I think on a clear day, I might have a chance to spot something, because the terrain is pretty bare, nothing but a few rocks and maybe some snow. in case it hasn't been snowed in, might be able to see something from the 4K footage. But
hopefully you painted it, because a white plane on a, like, looking for a white plane in the snow is going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah. Well, also, I've got somebody trekking the mountain almost every day, and they've got the coordinates, so hoping at some point it might yield some results. But I told the guy, if you find the plane, depending on the condition it is in, just bring back the camera. That's the most important thing. You can leave the rest up there.
3 things for you: walk, get a better radio, and don't fly that far. So it's 3 solutions for you.
Doesn't matter what radio I get, it's not going to work behind the mountain.
No,
But
no,
that's
you
another
go to the top of, no, you walk to the top of the mountain, and then you can fly.
There's also that. In the comments, people are mentioning terrain following. If you had terrain following enabled, maybe it would have done that.
Actually, I have discussed terrain following, and actually today and yesterday I spoke with Nathan Ake. Gary, you remember Nathan?
Yeah.
And he told me about terrain following, but then he said he's only been using it on a relatively flat piece of land, and it has worked well for him over there. I'm still unclear as to how you are supposed to preload the terrain details for where you're going to fly, because I rarely fly.
No.
Also that. Yeah.
Sorry,
so,
Lou. I'm not putting that shit on my plane. Sorry.
Okay. Then sorry, Nikolai. Then you deserve that every plane goes to the other one. So all planes will go there, and it's your fault.
Well, you know what? It will make it easier to find them when they're all piled together.
Okay. Now they're all white. Don't worry. Get one of these, because terrain following is just a general idea of the terrain, because the grid is too big, and terrain following works better with a LiDAR.
Yeah,
so
well, it's not terrain following. It's real.
Get a LiDAR from South Africa.
Okay, hold on. No. Okay, hold on. Terrain following works better with a radar when the plane is following the terrain immediately below it. Predictive plane terrain following wouldn't benefit much from a LiDAR, would it?
But at the end of the day, let's just rewind this a little bit. You're behind the mountain at low level, trying to skim across the snow on the top. Who knows? Let's say there's a little bit of a curl over on the top of that mountain. Regardless of what you've done, you might have pushed yourself into the top of the mountain anyway. So you really were on the ragged edge. Come on.
No, he was beyond the ragged edge. So he deserves not to find the plane until the spring.
And John Gustav, John's just saying in the comments, UGS terrain following. It's exactly the same in Archipilot. Basically, it's basically exactly the same. And the LiDAR just does make a difference. It makes a difference in auto landing. Auto landing, that's what you really have it for, and it's absolutely tickety boo. But before we keep going down this rabbit hole of Nicola flying behind the mountain, no wonder he crashed any further. And also,
perhaps he learned something. Perhaps he learned something.
Exactly. And smart RTL is coming from Chris iForce 2D. Yeah, I mean, there's many rally points. Is another thing you could do where it would turn into comms either side of the obstruction. There's lots of ways around it. I suppose I'm just trying to say nicely, Nicola, flight planning.
Well, that is quite difficult to do for a few reasons. My initial plan for that flight was set up a few waypoints over the flying field and chase the plane with the Phantom, which I tried to do, but no matter what settings I put on the crosswind, that thing is bloody fast. And the Phantom is having a really hard time catching up to it. So after chasing it unsuccessfully for around 10 minutes, I thought, okay, so I've got probably another 110 minutes of flight left. And the idea of it just circling around the flying field wasn't all that appealing. So rather than land and do flight planning, I just headed for the top of the mountain. What else am I supposed to do?
Of course. What else exactly? And that top of the mountain that you had hot. But
would have been 2 hours for them.
But how far away was it? You were probably what, 10, 15 k's away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sloping down the side of the mountain like 10 meters above the ground. It was awesome. It was epic. It was worth it. You know, it was worth it. If I recover only the camera, it would still be worth it. I don't care about the plane. I mean, it's a piece of foam, but the footage is valuable because it was awesome.
Yes. Well, I think that but that if
the
you had
DVR, the DVR sadly doesn't look as awesome as the 4K footage from the gimbal camera would have looked like.
Yeah, I mean, far be it from me to throw stones. I may or may not know of somebody that may or may not have flown into the top of a local mountain because he got the altitude wrong at the top of the mountain, and I watched it just flying straight into it, and I was too slow to do anything about it. So I can't really throw any stones. But it does come down to flight planning, really.
A friend of mine has been thinking about a way to enable himself to fly behind the mountain. So basically, the idea we were discussing was we build a plane that's a relay station, and we put it
up on top.
We put it circling at around 2,500 meters, somewhere close to the over the mountain, and at that point, you can take a second plane and do whatever you want around that mountain on any side, and you wouldn't lose the video feed. And you'd have actually a perfect video feed because it's not that far off. We're talking like 10, 15 kilometers either way. So,
but you keep flying up to the radar station on top of the mountain. I assume the radar station's got a road and power. Why not just put a mast up there?
Actually, I have been wanting to go up to that place and fly from there. Problem is that road is closed off for civilians, so getting the plane put up there would be difficult.
I know what you mean. Flying on military zones at 15 k's. Come on.
No, but what we'll do is we'll get Bruce to send you a letter. Bruce will give you permission, and everything will be fine. It'll be fine.
I'll do that. But you may have hit a mountain. You may have hit a mountain. But I hit a portable toilet. How's that?
That's accuracy.
No, actually,
that's accuracy. That's what that is.
Actually, the mountain hit me.
Oh dear. Oh dear, this is going. We are 23 minutes of talking nonsense.
He'll have to change his name to Cliff now.
Oh, there you go. Very good, very good. One thing I'm going to do before we go any further is I'm going to see if we can manage to speak to Richard, and then we'll speak to Richard after the guys from Spectre Works. But Richard, CQ, Richard, over.
I'm hoping you can hear this.
You're 5x5, and you're doing this by the miracle of 2 computers.
Yeah, and some duct tape, and I've got a can of WD-40 over here as well. It's all kind of going.
Beautiful. That's spoken like the man that's in charge of the UTM for DJI now. I mean, that's how it should be, really, isn't it?
And well oiled. Is that what you meant?
Well oiled. Oh, very good. Very good, very good, very good, very good. Let's jump. We'll come back to you in a minute, Richard, because we need to have a long chat. But let's jump to Joe and David there with the ground control station, which I think has closed itself down behind you. You might need to power it up again. Spectre Works. Why should we care about Spectre Works? Why should we care about the ground control station that you released this week?
Yeah. So,
good question.
Yeah. So. I don't know how much you and your listeners know about Spectreworks. I think most people know us from the core carrier board for the Cube autopilot, also known as the multi-rotor carrier board. But really, our core business is in engineering services and production of vehicles and systems for beyond line of sight operations. So the Spectreworks team originally kind of spun out of 3DR and 3DR's enterprise development team that Joe really helped start up back in the day. And over the last 4 years, we've really been learning a lot about what people's needs are in this space, and we've kind of finally culminated all that with launching a line of products that allow us to fly these VTOL quad planes beyond line of sight with all the ground support equipment that you need. So a lot of it, yeah.
So, well, then, first of all, before we go any further, just convince me about separate lift thrust vehicles. I still need convincing. I'm not a believer.
So, I mean, there is no perfect aircraft. Every aircraft is a compromise. Almost any machine is some form of compromise. You can't have it all. So you pick the portions that you want to compromise on if they don't affect, to minimize the effects on whatever your goals are, the negative effects, right? So for the separate lift and thrust, I mean, there are some important points compared to like tilt rotors or any other type of VTOL system. One of the most important is it's the most simple mechanically, so it's less prone to failure. It also has probably the most amount of time, I guess, spent developing the functionality and reliability of like a quadcopter. Like everybody knows a quadcopter works. It's been proven. The code's, you know, hardened. One of the other reasons too, I mean, besides those other methods, like you can optimize your rotors and your motors for their intended operation. So for example, if you just have like a motor that tilts with a prop on it, then you know it's either going to be optimized for forward flight or static thrust, but not both, unless it's collective pitch. But then again, now you have more complexity, right? And so like in our electric plane, we have the Cobalt gas or electric, and in the electric one, we actually not only optimize the propellers and motors, but we have different battery chemistry. So there's LiPos for the VTOL, which is short duration, high energy output, and then we have lithium ion for the forward propulsion. So that allows us to fly longer. So those are just some of the advantages I can see.
Additionally, both propulsion and flight systems are independent, so you can completely lose your fixed wing flight system, and then you kind of have the VTOL system as a parachute. So whether you lose a control surface actuator or your forward thrust.
And we've tested that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's almost like a controlled parachute if you want, like.
Okay, and then the ground control station. So you've got two screens on that. One is for monitoring the aircraft, and one is for watching cable TV as it flies, I guess.
Yeah. So this system is intended to kind of mimic more of the ground control stations that are often used in military environments, where the concept of a flight crew with an internal pilot, an external pilot, and a payload operator. Typical GCSs try to integrate all three functions into one box, but that's not how our customers fly when they're doing missions beyond line of sight. So we actually have the GCS that you see as the GCS is really intended as a workstation for the internal pilot. The external pilot still uses an RC controller, which is networked into our other radios, and the payload operator can either use the second screen of our GCS, or they can use an additional workstation networked in. So it's all very network centric and intended for operating higher end payloads beyond line of sight.
And then we just basically took what, I mean, I've flown tons of different UAVs. I've seen them, I've had to use them, I've seen all the pains, all the nice points about them, and I'm like, we just kept, like, we were gonna just buy one from somebody else. We were like, well, it doesn't have this, doesn't have that, it's fairly expensive. Like, what's stopping us? I mean, we can do all this awesome work with aircraft. This seems like a little bit of an easier, just why don't we just make it?
Yeah.
And so we did.
And then, and in the questions, Gorilla Drones is saying, hi guys, how does it switch between the different propulsion systems, the power battery types?
So they're independent circuits, and so the autopilot is in control of both systems. So depending on what type of flight you're in, whether it's because an operator is telling you to land, or you're in a mission and you're starting your landing, or some fail-safe triggers landing, it will automatically know that it's time to switch to vertical flight and take care of all that for you.
And the ground control station, then, does it have to be plugged into the mains? How does it have internal batteries? If it does, how long will it last, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so the GCS is the first of the products in this product line that we've really talked about publicly. So the core features of it has a Intel-based processor in there, the i7-8650 motherboard, so a pretty high-end processor, along with a UPS, a managed networking switch, a PoE injector that's used for powering our auxiliary and radio systems, as well as the 2 monitors, a lot of USB ports for various control devices and storage devices that people use. And so it's designed to be in a deployed environment. So it can be powered off of 120 or 240 AC, 12 to 36 volts DC. And there's a selector switch on there. And you can even switch actively between AC and DC while you're using it, because we have the UPS built in. So the UPS that's internal is designed to provide up to about 45 minutes of operation to let you work while you're either switching your power sources or troubleshooting your generator or whatever.
Or bringing your plane back to land. It should be enough time.
Yeah, exactly. So its design is more of an emergency power source, but then we also have a large DC power bank that we use if you need to do it without it, in a situation where you don't have access to AC power.
Yeah.
And then I suppose I'll see if oh, sorry, Bruce, did you have a question? You go first.
Yeah, no, I was reading the article on SUAS News, excellent website, by the way. And my loins were moistening when I read UPS, mil-spec connector, and then I read Windows 10. What happens if you're about to land and it says, please wait, Windows is updating? Is Windows 10 really the best platform for that, given security, given the fact that feature upgrades tend to break old stuff? Why didn't you go with something like Linux?
Yeah, so in the end, it's a workstation, and we can configure it for software the customer desires. The vast majority of our customers are using software that's designed for Windows 10. Most of the ISR software that's used by the US government, at least, is designed in a .NET Windows environment and everything. So that's our standard configuration, but we absolutely can do Ubuntu or Red Hat or whatever your desired platform is,
or other versions of Windows. Or whatever. We just said that that's what we've been using successfully. That's how everything it's configured, but there's no reason you couldn't put anything else on there. That was and the auto reboot thing, you can turn that off, I believe, to answer your question.
Oh yeah, so I mean, configuration management of the software is a whole other conversation. Right. But yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to pick your, I suppose, and to be fair, you didn't put a proper press release or anything. I just picked off something you put out on the So yeah, you know,
like it kind of gained a little bit more momentum that we thought, and then
yeah,
so, all right.
Yeah. So the GCS on its own is kind of an incomplete picture of what the real system is. So the GCS is intended to go along with another piece of equipment. So we call this the SAMS, or the Spectre Works antenna mast system. So this is an external radio module that's designed to do whatever your typical telemetry radio of choice is, whether that's one of the RF design products or a micro-hard product, along with other military or other networking radios. It also has an IMX6-based Linux server on board, and has the ability to forward all of your safety pilot RC commands. And so this device connects directly to the GCS, and it is powered over a power over Ethernet connection, gigabit Ethernet, and also has a managed switch on board with its own internal UPS. So this is designed so that you can set this up, it can sit outside forever, or it can be very portable. While your operators are comfortably inside, the internal pilot is in a comfortable environment, but you're not compromising your radios by having to extend all of your radios with long coaxial cables, or by placing them inside.
Yeah.
There's not many.
This is where we get our RC control. Well, like, so we can, like, a lot of the systems I've seen, if you like the higher end ones, your RC box is typically plugged in, so you have you're basically on a leash, and it kind of sucks sometimes. So this gives us options. It's all designed to be very modular, so we can either have a leash, like Joe says, if you're in a very kind of RF sensitive environment, or we can also integrate many different brands of RC receiver in here, and then have those telemetry commands forwarded. Yeah, so I can just walk around and I don't have to worry about tripping or,
So I guess what's immediately coming to my mind is you'll need training in your way of thinking for the operators at very least. You know, you've got a system, and obviously it goes with your aircraft as well. So is it platform? So it goes with your aircraft. That goes without saying, should we say? And then can you add other platforms to it, or is it only your airplane? Could I come and buy the GCS and radio system?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's designed to be a very modular system. We know have a lot of customers that always come to us and ask to integrate the same radios. So it's designed to take anything from RFD, micro hard, Silvus radio, Skyhopper, or any of the persistent systems radios. That's kind of what it's really designed around.
But you can fly any.
It can fly, yeah, it can fly
whatever.
anything. It's designed around Mavlink ecosystem, so whether that's RD Pilot or PX4, but it could certainly be adapted to other telemetry protocols as well.
And I have to ask the horrible question: what sort of money is this going to set me back? Because Bruce said he buys one each.
Yeah, it's very configuration dependent, and I don't want to mislead anybody by giving a price because it's so configuration dependent. So if you throw us an email at info@Spectreworks, we can get you a quote. Sorry, sorry to be.
No, that's fine. And now, am I half seeing in your occasional good video there a helicopter as well as a separate lift thrust vehicle behind you? Or am I just not seeing that? I'm not seeing that, am I?
No.
Yeah.
No. No.
So the rest of our antenna mast system is in the back.
Yeah.
So
that's what it is. Okay.
So it can either be deployed on a mast. It has that quick release, or it can be set on a desk with shorter antennas, whatever you need. So it's ruggedized. So we have a kind of standard mast that we ship out with it.
Yeah,
and that's it. What's it, just an omnidirectional of some sort? Is it a collinear? Is it a J-pole? Or?
Yeah, the standard antenna configuration that we use is one omnidirectional and one Yagi antenna, but it's all connectorized, so you can use whatever antennas suit your mission.
And this stuff is all fairly new, like developments for us. I mean, we've been learning and growing and kind of taking the time to just, instead of like talking about, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had this or that, like, which we always do. And then we're just like, we should just do it. Like, why not? We just do it. So we've developed, you know, this family of systems that are all designed to work either independently or together to help support our missions. And you guys will hear a lot more about that as, you know, in the short term. The GCS is kind of the first one. We'll talk more about the antenna and like the other our power supply that we've developed as well.
I think the main thing is a lot of people see this stuff and it seems excessive to them, or it may not seem like it fits their needs, but it's designed for kind of very specific paradigm that we see commercial users that are doing true beyond line of sight work, whether it's in a government defense situation or in a civil situation where you really need to kind of make the distinction between who's flying on the computer and who's flying on the sticks, and have the, you know, safety pilot is there to be a safety pilot, but most of your operations are really happening from the GCS.
Well, I think Nicholas largely exposed some of the issues with single pilot flying earlier.
And
now
this is a system that Nicholas should start using. Nicholas, have you sent the email to info@Spectreworks?
It'll fly the crosswind.
And the your airframe behind us there. Just unpack that airframe behind you there. Unpack that a little bit. How long? How far? How fast? All those other things people want to hear.
So we have the two aircraft. So we have we have a family of aircraft called the Cobalt series. It's available in 2 different size configurations and multiple different propulsion system configurations. So the Cobalt 55 is our smaller offering. It's designed to max out the 55 pounds, 25 kilogram ceiling that is kind of appearing throughout the commercial world. And then we have the Cobalt 110, which is the 110 pound or 50 kilogram configuration, which is for larger systems where you have a more advanced payload or some mobile networking system that you need to deploy and you don't have those limitations.
And it flies longer and it's just a little easier to work on if you have the authority to use it. So we fly it in restricted airspace or in other countries that have a little less stringent rules. But yeah, they're similar. It just, you know, in terms of capability, this one's designed to be within that that spec, like David said. That just seems to be common, and still is a very capable platform. We've, in terms of like how long, I mean, we've flown the electric one for about an hour and a half. The gas one, it'll go 4 to 6 hours. It totally depends on your density altitude. And the larger one, well, I don't think we've ever done a full like tank with it, but I mean, we can
designed for a 12-hour endurance.
It should. Yeah. We calculated based on the fuel burn that it would go about 12 hours. Which is, it's a fairly long endurance plane.
Yeah, so the Cobalt 55, we have the two configurations, the electric or the gas. Electric is 90 minutes, as Joe said. Gas is 4 to 6 hours, depending on payload. And then the 110 is designed to be an ultra high endurance, well, for its size, got 12-hour platform. And we don't currently offer an electric configuration of the larger one, but it's something that we're looking into.
We talked about it. It's a little silly, but it'll totally work. And so, I mean, in practice, the electric one is a lot easier to integrate. So we'll use that for like technical demonstrations, where, like, you know, their clients, the other guy's clients, will show up and be like, all right, that's cool, and then 10 minutes later leave. Like, oh, look, it's working, you know? Whereas the gas one would be more in an operational environment where you're doing real world missions.
So we're really targeting the Cobalt series for other systems integrators or other OEMs that have systems that they need to get in the air, whether it's to demonstrate to their customer or to have their specific use case. So it's designed to be very versatile. There's a lot of networking equipment that's built into the basic configuration of the avionics stack that's in there. And they're designed to support many different radio systems, as well as a very large payload volume. So, we, as a systems integrator, we keep having companies come to us, say they just need a truck to fly X. And, that's what we really designed it around.
And if they were ever to go to, I mean, where else can you go? You can't go to like these big aerospace companies. Even if you had, I mean, they're not going to make you two like different ones from their production line. I mean, that's super cost prohibitive. But for us, I mean, it's that was kind of the idea, because we kept getting people asking us like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? These guys said the lead time will be a year and it'll cost $2 million or whatever, you know. And so that's kind of where we just happen to find our niche in this, you know, commercial UAS space. And we've been pretty successful at it, and we've done a lot of varied like payload integrations and missions, which keeps it exciting. I mean, we both love what we do here. It's like it's always changing. It's not the same thing.
The biggest niche it's been in is mobile networking and radio infrastructure deployments, where we're radio infrastructure around. That's one area that it really shines, because we have a lot of payload power available, and we have all of that onboard networking equipment built in.
We were actually flying one of these down in New Zealand last year.
Had a very cool demonstration there.
Well, I mean, it's got to be easier to fly down there, because surely it's wanting to fall off the Earth. I mean, I've always thought it must be a lot easier to fly down there. FX Node's asking, is it an open stack?
As in are the electronics open source, or is it using open source software? I can describe what the stack is. So the stack is based around the Cube Autopilot. And so we have a 2-board stack that includes on the top avionics board, the Cube Autopilot, whichever version you prefer, as well as an IMX6 based embedded computer that we use for video encoding and networking, as well as an 8-port gigabit managed Ethernet switch, as well as a lot of different kind of power and signal interfaces for all of those devices. And on the bottom layer, there's a power board that's configurable based on the propulsion system you're using. So there's a separate power board for the electric configuration versus the gas configuration. The gas configurations all have alternators, 350-watt alternator on the smaller vehicle and a 500-watt starter alternator on the larger vehicle. And so from that, you get 120 watts on 24 volt, 120 watts on 12 volt, and then a 5-volt payload rail that's available for powering different things. And then on the gas configuration, you can get an additional 200 watts off of the alternator, an external regulator module.
It's all well. Go again with your web address, because I always forget to put it. But go again with your web address.
Info at Spectreworks.com. Spectreworks is SPEKTRE works.com. Just on the back.
Right.
Look, I can't quite see it, and FX knows the software. It's Arduplane and other stuff.
Yeah, we use Arduplane. There's also a microcontroller that's supplemental to the autopilot that we have that does some supplemental features for us. And then it's Linux on the IMX6 with running GStreamer and a lot of other open source tools and some proprietary tools that we've developed.
No, that's grand. That's grand. Let's keep, please stay with us. But as time is ticking on, and it's time to get the man with the most complicated communication setup currently here. Okay. Okay. All right.
And I'll see you next week.
All right, mate. Look after yourself and enjoy your trips to the top of the mountains, looking for that airplane.
Enjoy your walk on the mountains.
Exactly. Flight planning. Flight planning.
Yeah, flight planning.
Yeah, flight planning.
Well, you know, we learn that.
I should send you one of my new T-shirts. Nicola, I should send you one of my new T-shirts, the one that says, "My plane is BV lost."
Yeah.
You couldn't wish for it to come together better, could you? What brilliant product placement. Well done, Nicola. Look after yourself, mate.
Yeah,
cheers,
guys.
Cheers, bye-bye. So Richard. Congratulations, a hearty congratulations from this side. Obviously, I'm going to ask you embarrassing questions as ever, because that's what I normally manage to do. So don't answer anything that I can.
Am I allowed to give embarrassing answers? I mean.
Oh yes, of course. And I've just noticed that you've put a DJI craft in the background there. Is that part of this is what you've got to do now? Is it you've got to have a DJI something in every shot?
Yeah, pretty much every time I appear in public, I'll be wearing something DJI.
Very good, very good. And are you speaking to us from your new offices, or are you still where you were?
Actually, I screwed up the times a little bit. So I thought I wouldn't hang around in the office forever. I would come home. So I'm sat upstairs in a room that we're decorating, which is the only quiet place in the house right now.
Well, for those people for any viewers that have been under a rock, literally under a rock today, you had some very exciting news. Perhaps you better explain it. You'll explain it better than me.
Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, so today, along with our new partners DJI, we're proud to be supporting DJI as it goes ahead and updates its geo fencing system to Geo version 2. And what that means is, customers in about 32 European countries will be able to now benefit from the safety data that we provide, so that the DJI products ultimately fly more safely, but also fly in more airspace. So we're really thrilled to be data partners for DJI.
And what cost to me as the end user is there for that?
Beyond you guys having to go and buy your DJI drone, nothing.
So as an end user, that's free. And then what's the benefit? Why on earth do I need it anyway? I mean, I don't need it. I'm brilliant. Why do I need this?
Well, for one, you've got really good, accurate mountain mapping available.
He's gone.
I think the interesting thing is right across Europe, we're seeing a real patchwork of different data availability to different levels of fidelity. And what that basically means to you as someone who's flying a geofence drone is that if you haven't got access to the most accurate data, then really what's going to happen is your drone isn't going to fly in places that you're perfectly entitled to fly it. And equally, DJI kind of pushing the boundaries out a little bit and trying to release products which are much safer than everyone else's, and therefore more accurately model the highest risk areas. So they kind of take our data, and then on top of that, they're able to place these very complex, kind of bow tie shapes and other more detailed three-dimensional shapes around different types of facilities to ultimately open up more of the airspace to their customers while maintaining safety around the highest risk areas. So it's a really nice integration that they've been able to do using the platform we've provided.
Now, you've not come out of nowhere. You didn't invent Altitude Angel yesterday and get this contract. And the keener-eyed amongst you will know, dear viewer, that Altitude Angel data and information is available through Mission Planner, and you can even see it on SES News via a little tab as well. Someone's any progress with Microsoft integration? Anyone know of updates? But anyway, I'm not quite sure what that question's about.
I think that's the question for the Spectreworks guys, right?
Maybe we'll maybe unpack that a little bit more for us above and beyond. Just explain that a little bit better. I'm not quite sure what you're after there. So you've not arrived out of nowhere, and again, we've spoken before. We've spoken many times. You've been on the show. You've always been a good sport. What makes your data different? And surely it's just a map. Surely you haven't got anything more than just a map, have you?
So the great news is, if you come and have a look at most of our products, then they look just like a map. But obviously what you don't see is the work that's gone into the collection of all of that data. And it's quite a complex process. You're right, as a company, we've been around for about 4 years now. And one of our absolute desires in life is to be the aggregator of the world's most accurate safety-related information for a drone. Now, clearly that's because if you're going to fly safely, you need very, very accurate information. But our mission is to help beyond visual line of sight and even fully automated flights over long distances in the future. And to be able to do that, you need very, very accurate mapping. So for us, we aggregate, particularly in Europe, where you have lots of different ANSPs, lots of different AIPs, aeronautical information publications, all coming together with slightly different formats, slightly different fields. We kind of standardize all of that information and make it available to developers, to manufacturers, through a single canonical model, and it's really easy to consume. And the second thing we do is we blend in real-time information. So that's taking things like the NOTAM system and then parsing those NOTAMs to a very, very high level of detail, so that instead of these very large cylinders, you get these very complex shapes that just pop out magically on our map at the right time in the right place. So ultimately, if your job is to implement, for example, a geofencing solution, which is a really novel way of using that data, then what it means to have more accurate data is that your drones will ultimately fly in more locations, and that data will be localized to the country that you're in. So, we wouldn't, for example, show stadium restrictions in the UK, whereas they would be appropriate in the US. So that information is kind of taken care of automatically for our developers.
Mm-hmm. You must be getting quite a chunky size of computers to operate all this. Quite a lot of stuff you know about. So I've got it. What am I trying to say? Is all your data on the app that I might be using, or is the app going to be calling your servers all the time to update it and keep it updated?
We have lots of options available, but we recommend to folks where possible you should have a live connection to us, and where it's not possible you should be pointing out to your end users when the connection was last refreshed. And that's partly, again, it's because of providing accurate and safe information means providing timely information as well. And a lot of airspace information is temporal, so it's important that developers kind of factor that stale, or the possibility of it being stale, into their apps to let their users know. But the general rule of thumb is, for example, if you go to dronesafetymap.com, anytime you scroll the map, then that's contacting Altitude Angel servers in real time to pull back the latest information. So you'll always have it as long as you're connected.
And Gorilla Jones saying, hope that geo unlocking is quick still for commercial usage with the next gen, with what you're rolling out. How does that work then, unlocking commercial usage?
So as far as I'm aware, the process itself isn't changing. That's going to remain the same. Certainly, we don't handle the unlocking of a specific DJI drone for DJI. That's still a DJI responsibility. But I think what it does mean is it's very likely that because they've now got much more accurate information, that you won't have to request to unlock in so many areas as before, because obviously you had bigger zones that you couldn't fly in. These new bow tie zones are very, very accurate and very, very tight around the runways, for instance, and therefore that permits lots of kind of adjacent flight, whereas before those whole areas were taken out. So a lot of folks who would have been requesting that kind of service, won't actually, hopefully, need to do that so much now.
Okay, so it's still a separate service, but your data is much tighter, or much more accurate. So the company's moved house, and this obviously, no, what I did want to say was Oh, and Above and Beyond says, will connecting to Altitude Angel provide flight clearance? I think we've probably just answered that. It's still through DJI, yeah?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the geo unlocking system isn't a flight clearance. That's a removal of the restriction on board the drone by DJI in response to a request from the user. Flight permissions is something that's very, very different and is currently, for example, in the US is being handled through Lance. In the UK, there is a system being developed with NATS right now, which will do something very similar. You're right, however, a connection into Altitude Angel optionally means that someone who connects to our UTM could ask Altitude Angel to go and file that request on their behalf. So you would have a single interface to that. But it's important to point out that this integration with DJI today is not that.
But we've spoken before about sort of one of your goals was, for me as an operator, I go anywhere in the world and I just say, I want to fly here, please. And I don't actually have to care about the intricacies of whether I'm using Lance or whatever rolls out in Europe. You'll take away that pain for me and say, yes, you can, Gary, or no, you can't. And it'll all happen magically in the background. Yeah,
exactly. So that's our kind of universal flight planning API or flight permissions API. And again, the main goal behind that is to hide software developers, drone manufacturers, even drone operators away from the complexities that are starting to evolve within a different national boundary. So different countries will have different systems, different interfaces, different processes. And again, we just want to hide all of that complexity away from the folks who actually just want to get access to the airspace as quickly as possible. So that can be a very complicated process. Certainly in some countries across Europe, multiple humans are involved in different roles to actually get into that approval process. Whereas some of those decisions can be absolutely automated straight away if they conform to certain rules. So again, one of the benefits of the Altitude Angel platform to folks who are providing those permissions is that it will integrate with their existing ATM networks, so their existing traffic control networks. For example, taking requests from your favorite drone safety app, and then, if appropriate, surfacing that as an electronic flight strip to an air traffic controller at an airport. So there's lots of configuration options that are available there.
And we haven't spoken since Gatwick. Did all of this, was all of this accelerated by Gatwick, or is it nothing to do with Gatwick, or you don't have to answer that?
The DJI news, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I'd like to say the DJI news was kind of snap your fingers and it was all done, but we've been working with DJI behind the scenes for a long time, a good number of months, and we're looking forward to a bright future with them. And
can I twist your arm for an opinion? Oh, go ahead, over.
Yeah. In New Zealand, the geofencing is ludicrous for DJI. I mean, at the airfield where I operate, they have a 500-meter radius exclusion zone around the airfield, but the regulations say it's a 4K exclusion. Now in the UK, isn't it going to 5 kilometres around an airfield? So what's with the bow tie thing? Will your geofencing be as per the CAA regulations or as per something designated by DJI? That is to say, who decides where you can and can't fly under the Altitude Angel geofencing DJI hookup?
So we have multiple options available to folks who are grabbing our data now. By default, our system will try and localize to whatever the country you're within and the local restrictions. However, DJI effectively take raw data from us, and then they layer on top of that their own geofencing restrictions according to the standards that they're published on the FlySafe website. So I think today that in the press release that DJI put out, they published their specifications, if you like, for what they call a high-risk airport, a medium-risk airport, and a low-risk airport. Those aren't boundaries that Altitude Angel have designed, but what we've done for DJI is to provide them with very detailed airport boundary information, runway paths, etc., so that they're then able to take that source information and build up those complex bow tie systems and shapes the way that they see fit for their customers.
So it's not the CAA designated 5 kilometre exclusion, it is whatever DJI has decided is best. So isn't that going to possibly be a bit of an issue if the DJI app says, oh, you're to the side of a runway, you're 2 kilometres away, you can fly, and then they get prosecuted by CAA for breaking the regulations?
I think it's a good point, but I think DJI would be quite keen to point out that nothing in their app kind of takes away the need from the pilot to familiarise themselves with the local restrictions and regulations. I think these are good measures to stop the drone doing, from causing maximum harm. They're really there to prevent that kind of novice from flying in a region where they absolutely have business being. And of course, because they're baked in to the hardware, then it's not something that the user really has much control over.
This is my beef with DJI. They've got the power to enforce regulations in a certain country, like a hard limit at 400 feet altitude, a maximum distance limit to enforce the no beyond visual line of sight operations, but they choose not to. And here in New Zealand, they actually make it worse, because if you were to fly up to the geofence from the outside, you would be actually flying on the threshold of a runway, which means it's actually even more dangerous than if there was no bubble here at all. So I wonder, from Altitude Angel's perspective, if there might not be some negative kickback if, DJI says, look, we've got this geofencing data provided by Altitude Angel, and then a whole lot of people end up with big fines because they thought Altitude Angel was going to protect them through DJI from flying in the wrong place, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we were quite keen for DJI to publish the specifications for how they're using our data and making that baked into their products. As anyone that's used Altitude Angel will know, or anyone that's heard any of us speaking or read anything that we published, we are incredibly fastidious about the quality of the data that goes out, and that does include by default localizing it for UK or US or New Zealand or Australia or each of the 83 countries that we work in. Those shapes will be customized for your territorial restrictions as at the current time. But again, I think we have to recognize that DJI have gone from an initial fly-safe system, which effectively was relatively simple and was a number of static cylinders around facilities of high risk. And what they're doing here is trying to move effectively the whole drone industry forward from a hardware manufacturing perspective into something which is better still, but again, still not perfect. And I think DJI would probably be the first to point out that they've still got some ways to go, but at the same time, recognizing that they're still the industry leader in terms of providing safe geofencing solutions out of the box. So
they're saying that although we have the ability to stop people from breaking the rules with their drones, we're not going to use it.
Well, without being a spokesperson for DJI, I think the pushback there is simply that not all DJI drones are connected to the internet, right? If you don't have a connection, you're not going to benefit from the highest fidelity data. And I don't think it would be physically possible, as Gary pointed out. The sheer amount of geospatial data that we have available wouldn't be storable on a drone. So this is about providing a minimum set of restrictions around low, medium, and high risk facilities, airports, etc. The things you really need to protect to minimize the risk in the airspace, and doing a really good job at preventing 99+% of those incursions. Sure, safety isn't a product, right? It's a journey, and I think they're on the right path.
So this will give it a hard limit then. The bow tie thing will be a hard limit around these different sizes of airports. That'll be very difficult to unlock unless you are genuinely qualified to be there. And that's what the big change is. Instead of is that what is my thinking right? So that's a new hard limit, whereas the old donut you could go in there, or tip biscuit tin you could go in there.
So I think they have the notion of something called an enhanced warning zone. Then there's an authorization zone, and then a restricted zone. My understanding, and I could be wrong here, is that the runway restricted zones you can't unlock, but the authorization zones, I believe you can. So we would need to check that with the update information on FlySafe. But again, we don't help DJI do the geofencing itself. Right? We provide them the base information so that they can add their own restrictions over the top.
And I suppose it'll be up to them to stop the hardware mods that people do as well. But you're right; it's all part of the safety journey, as you've correctly said, and we are perhaps going in the right direction. And New Zealand has the very sensible shielded operations, which could also roll out all around the world. There's lots of things that could come into play, and fair play to you for your data being well. Everyone wants to fly with the best data. I always said it, no, a broken record. But if your data is inaccurate, you might as well not have it at all. You might not be flying. We might as well not bother having any at all. So well done to you. Well done to the team there. And how was, I did meant to ask earlier, how was the move to the new facilities?
Slightly less stressful than we were prepared for, which was good. We got there, and there's a nice bar and everything's all provided, so it's great. So everyone was certainly very stressed until we all hit the included bar, so that was great.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. All right, look, we've gently gone over the hour here. I'll read some more comments in a second, but while we're doing that, let's see. Does anyone else have anything else while I'm reading the comments?
Yeah, here in New Zealand, there was a story. A Chinese tourist got their drone confiscated because they were flying in a place called Fox Glacier, where there's a lot of helicopter operations. And the police have come out and said, if anybody sees a drone flying near an airport or an aircraft base, they should dial 111, which is our emergency number, and report it. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I fly at an airfield. Every time someone drives past, are the police going to get an emergency call? What's going on? It is like the hysteria has reached the police. They want everyone to dial the emergency number. If you see a drone near an airport or an aircraft base, when's it going to end?
Yes, I think, did I see there was another one in Paris and another one in Egypt? Yeah, the one in Paris and one in Egypt. Also tourists, also caught operating by the police. So yeah, I guess the world, that's what the world's looking out for now, I suppose.
But it also shows how lacking these government agencies are in terms of the ability to promulgate their regulations to the target audience. And here in New Zealand, CAA have made some videos, very good videos, which show what you can do, what you can't do. And they've even put subtitles in Korean and Chinese and things. And they've put them up on their YouTube channel. They've been there for a week and they've had 7 views.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
this is a problem everywhere because, I mean, the technology is evolving faster than the regulations can.
Can we really use that argument, do you think, anymore? Can we really use that? How long has the Phantom been around? It's not quite been 10 years, has it? And Australia had its regulation. Yeah, had its regulations in 2000.
Because it's having like more and more broad access to these platforms that work more and more reliably and are seen by a wider and wider audience, and the price is coming down, so it's still going, maybe not as quickly, right, as it has in the past. I agree with that, but still, certainly, it is faster than like the response to it, that the government has, and there's never going to be there's always going to be someone who's going to take something and use it in a dumb way, it's like almost inevitable, and it's just what it is, a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, it could be used for good or it could be used for something horrible. So that's kind of up to everybody.
I've heard that said about Bruce, a powerful tool.
Yeah, it's so true. The interesting thing is the problem we have is that the government authorities, the aviation regulators, are not used to dealing with a situation where they don't have the same authority that they do with like manned aviators. Manned aviators are all document holders. So CAA has quite a bit of authority over them. The general public are not document holders because here in New Zealand we don't have registration. So their authority is greatly limited. And the problem seems to be that CAA, certainly in New Zealand, is so used to being basically listened to by everybody that's affected by them, that they don't think they need to take their message out and promulgate it. And they won't speak to people who have the necessary knowledge, experience, and ability to help them promulgate their information. I mean, because I say, I've suggested to CAA they have a QR code at all ports of entry so tourists can just snap it with their phone and download the relevant information or video or whatever. And they all agreed that's a fantastic idea 2 years ago. And it's still not done, so we have Chinese tourists flying their drones over helicopter bases. I mean, seriously, it's like, if we didn't think of it, it's no good.
Yeah, well, not invented here sort of thing. Richard, did you have some sort of comment on the regs?
I was going to say, I think on the regulation side of things as well, one of the big things that most folks have trouble parsing is when the regulations are open to interpretation. So a classic example is you shall not fly over a congested area. Now, in some territories, a congested area is reasonably well defined, but in others, it's more or less impossible to work out. So if you're trying to produce a product which can work out whether the area is congested or not, you have absolutely no way to do that because there isn't a formula for it. So there's lots of elements of regulations around the world that are sort of more qualitative than quantitative. And I think until we can get to that phase, you're going to have lots of situations like this occurring.
Well, we find
one way that phrase, they have
Who's going first? I'll go.
If you look at an airspace map, there's a yellow section, and because this also applies to how low aircraft can fly, and they use the same technology. So is that FAA?
No, this is UCAN. It's exactly the same. It's upside down,
Okay, yeah.
but I'm going to say it's yellow. Yellow is a congested area.
Yellow is congested. So there's some, but I mean, for the size of area that you're operating in, it's kind of hard to tell. Like with that, I mean,
yeah.
So,
and it's like the other aspect as well, as you see, aviation regulations are usually tied to something like the AIPs or the equivalent of the Air Navigation Order, which is really a set of legislation that was designed for manned pilots traveling in the aircraft, right? So it's very different when you're thinking about the future of automated transport over the next 15, 20 years' time. Then you need a very different set of regulations and criteria, data that goes with it, etc.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, but aren't we all rushing to get all this because we need to have the flying car? Actually, I'm going to go down a huge ranty area if I'm not careful. I am getting a bit wound up by people saying we need the UTMs now because we need all the flying cars. It's like, well, hang on. And one of my responses to them will be, well, some good UTMs are here already. Other UTMs are available, and we don't need to reinvent anything yet. We're putting the cart before the horse at the moment, and you're going to have years to adjust your UTM to flying cars. But anyway, I'll stop. Richard, shut me up.
I'm not really sure how. If I could do that, I would have done that many podcasts ago.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Good point. Well made.
Does anyone know how? I mean, I'm just wondering. Bruce, you're probably the closest to all of us.
No, I just think it's just such a nonsense. I'm getting eVTOLs. Well, that's a lovely idea, but why don't we move 500 kilos of cargo around for a couple of years and see how that goes before we start putting businessmen flying off the top of buildings in the center of cities? Just
now, Gary, you had an interesting article about jamming taking place in the part of the UK there, jamming of RPAS frequencies. Do you want to enlighten people on that if they haven't read it? Because I had some comments on that.
Well, yeah, they were going for all the common frequencies, 5.8 and 2.4, and GPS as well. And there's going to be some jamming trials up to 40,000 feet. I thought that was very accurate in itself. It's great they can make it stop at 40,000 feet. That's really, really very good.
Yeah, that was my comment. That they've got this area mapped out on a map, and we're going to do trials in this area, and as if radio waves will suddenly stop when they reach the boundary of the area, and propagation effects have nothing. So you can't do that. Are these people idiots? And also, what have they done? What about 27 megahertz, 35, 36, 72, 868, 900, 1.2, 2.4, and 3.3 gigahertz? I have equipment on all those frequencies here for drone use. Why concentrate on those tiny, those frequencies that are so small? And also GPS, how can they possibly disrupt GPS? Even if you're advising people, not everyone's going to read that little thing. So what about people that are reliant on GPS for really important services and they don't know about this, and it screws up their day because there's every few minutes there's a complete disruption to the GPS services. I'm surprised that the equivalent of the radio spectrum people in the UK have actually allowed this, because I know in Australia they can't use anti-drone weapons because the Australian regulator won't let them.
Yeah, well, yes, but I think the military has a special ticket. But a lot of the comments that there's been on social media about that and Facebook and stuff has exactly been, how can this be legal? But it just is. I've responded to that in some ways. Every Thursday in the 80s, I think the Royal Navy probably still does do it. They have a Thursday war. You wouldn't have a war on a Friday because obviously you want to get home because it's Saturday the next day. But regularly, when particularly American aircraft prowlers used to come up through the English Channel, they used to switch off television through the whole of the southern coast of the UK. The jamming and electronic warfare and stuff that goes on. People just don't know it's out there. It is out there, and we have to be cognizant of it using our C2 links, most of which are in ISM bands or barely protected spectrum. But that's a whole nother kettle of ball games.
Yeah, I think jamming as a counter UAS methodology, at least when it comes to safety or stopping weaponized systems, is just such a dead end, and it's such a distraction. I think it's really a disservice that there are all these jamming companies out there that are claiming that they have the solution, where somebody without an engineering background wouldn't understand the limitations of that. It's really sad.
But I think that's probably it, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to join some random dots. But after Gatwick, perhaps the military have said, right then, you lot that claimed you could do this, that, and the other, come here, show us what you can do. Yeah, come here and prove it. Because as we know, Gatwick was a fantastic example of one particular counter UAS company that was not there, got all the press. They had no equipment on the ground. So it was brilliant on their part. Absolutely brilliant. And move no equipment, get all the world's press. But it wasn't there. And Gatwick, I'm utterly still not convinced. Maybe we can tease an opinion out of Richard, but probably not. No, yeah, exactly. He looked the other way straight away, didn't he? But your phone must have rung off the hook there. The people must have said the person that's flying at Gatwick must be using Altitude Angel to log their flights. They must.
We did have a little check of our database to see if anyone had voluntarily reported flights, and we were a little bit concerned because just to the north of Gatwick, the next day, so the day after the event kind of initially unfolded, there was a chap planning to do like a wedding photography session, and we were wondering whether perhaps we should kind of try and get a hold of him and just say, hey dude, maybe you don't want to do this just yet. Maybe just land. But we didn't. We left it.
But he did cancel, didn't he? Because he put his head above the parapet on various social media outlets, and yeah, he did actually voluntarily cancel, quite wisely probably. I'm not convinced about all of this and the jamming and stuff. Yeah, that's great. I mean, you just all you need to do for the guys at Spectreworks is just add a couple of buttons on your GCS and then pretend just label them. And I've seen these things at Farnborough, label 5.8, 2.4 GPS.
The problem is though that it's such a immensely complex problem to solve, especially if you're trying to extract some explosive or dangerous device from the airspace, that anything is going to be able to get funding at this point because it's such a big issue and has such potential for destruction. One thing that I was looking at, there's some studies that are interesting, looking into ultrasonic methods for counter UAS. So trying to get cheap IMUs into their resonant states using intense ultrasonic attacks. I don't think it's very feasible, but I think whatever counter UAS solutions come out are going to be kind of a mixed bag of kind of out of the box techniques. And I'm excited to see where that industry really goes. Hopefully it goes good places because it's something that the world really needs.
Does it? I wonder. Yeah, I suppose it does, but we've got all these other. But does it? Does it, Bruce? What do we need this industry, Bruce? Do we need the counter US industry?
Look at the number of attacks where people have died. Look at the number of airliners have been brought down by malicious bad actors. Look at the number of times recreational drones have been used for murderous purposes. And I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of at that point as well. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Isn't it?
I guess I think that the drone industry needs it almost more than the public does. That we as UAS manufacturers have a higher threat. I mean, it's not going to be, the industry is not going to be shut down at this point, but I think there are certainly more roadblocks that can be put in our way if there isn't a viable counter UAS solution out there that gives people the feeling that the government has the ability to lock things down.
It should be remembered that it's been 17 years since I built my own cruise missile and publicized the fact that the technology was available off the shelf to build a GPS-guided vehicle capable of carrying a heavy payload long distances and blowing stuff up. Hasn't happened? No, it hasn't.
But it's only going to take one attack, right? It's only going to take one event that really does to completely change the world's view on this,
But at the
that's
moment,
my perspective. That's what I'm nervous about.
Well, we've had one attack on a truck bomb in Oklahoma City. We haven't banned trucks or got anti-truck devices and things like that.
Yeah, but that's because everybody deals with pipes. Everybody deals with trucks every day, and so drones are something different. Drones are something that there are people that are very involved with.
There's 1 million registered drone owners in the USA. Everyone does have a drone or has seen a drone. They are becoming very commonplace. The phobia should be dissipating. They are as commonplace as many other household items that can be used for good or bad.
Yes, I'm going to move the conversation along because it's always a tricky one, isn't it? And did anyone else have anything else just while we're here, just before I go on to my last thing? Don't want to go into ice. And all it was that I see that the future's been, and this is only going to, Richard's going to be the only person that may have even been to this area, but I'm quite excited to see that the future's been safeguarded for the Snowdonia Aerospace Centre. And I can't think of a nicer place to go and sit by the beach and fly drones off the end of the runway and avoid Welsh people. It'd be a lovely, lovely, lovely place to work. So good luck to them.
Lots of lamb leaks.
Lamb, exactly. And up in North Wales, lots of burning cottages as well. But it'd be a lovely place to go and work.
And a drone crashed into a mine, and they found a flat miner at the bottom.
Have you moved to India? Has he gone to India? Yeah. What's he
doing? Sound particularly well to me there.
That's my generic foreign accent.
We have a Welsh person that works for us, and she does not sound like you.
You can play this bit back, and she might say, "Oh my word, that sounds like long lost Uncle Bruce," something like that. You know. Anyway, yeah, no. So good, well done to Snowdonia, and I would love to go and do some work out there. It'd be very nice indeed.
Like anyway, behind the wardrobe, doesn't it? Some country you walk through a wardrobe to get to it.
I think actually that they have you don't have to pay to get out of Wales anymore. You said to pay to get out of Wales on the Severn Bridge, but they've just dropped the toll fee. And I thought, this is pull up a sandbag. I thought the most interesting thing about that is, take note, American viewers, that's the first time in 800 years you haven't had to pay a fee across that bit of river. So it's only been a fee in place there for 800 years. So that's a...
Let the exodus begin.
Yeah, I think there's 3 bridges across there now, but I've only seen 2 of them. But anyway, with that, this is definitely going into Randosphere. Well done, Richard. Well done, Altitude Angel. It's well deserved, and keep on pushing. I look forward to see whatever is next. Louis, you've been very quiet overall, which is surprising.
It's not surprising because we've discussed this topic of the restrictions with Richard at length on other occasions.
Yes.
They have an excellent service. I don't need to sell his services because he's doing very well selling them, and it's great to see that quality always rises to the top.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I think we have all thought that over the years. So well done, you, and the guys at Spectreworks. Thank you very much for coming along. We look forward to seeing more of your airframes and your ground control stations. And please send your press releases as soon as you come. And if you dare, please come back and tell us more when you have more news.
We definitely will. Thanks for having us.
Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you. And Bruce, well, whatever. Yeah. If you put a flight controller in that 250-gram thing, that's sub 250. Come on, let's see that done properly.
I have another one almost ready with a flight controller, and it's slightly different design. But I got to say, I've had more fun with that thing than I've had for ages. There's a real screen flying that thing.
Yeah, no, you can tell. No, I've enjoyed that. It's been a good series. For those that don't know, that is on RC Model Reviews, isn't it? It's either on XJet or RC Model Reviews. One of them. XJet.
Be on RC Model Reviews.
Oh, that's right, because you modelled the tailplane on where you did the graffiti. That's what I always thought. Your tailplane looks a little bit like your graffiti skate park thing. Anyway, I'm talking nonsense. With that, dear viewers, thank you very much. Don't forget, join us again, 2100 GMT next week. Be safe, whatever you're doing this week. Have a lovely time if you're going flying on the weekend. See you next week. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.